Good day, fellow Americans. The Syrian civil war is reaching the 8th year of ongoing acts of violence. Lack of freedoms and economic woes drove resentment of the Syrian government. The crackdown on pro-democracy protesters ignited public anger among the country, splitting the country into many groups, including the Syrian government, Iraqi government, Syrian rebels, ISIS, Syrian Kurds, and Iraqi Kurds. In 2011, the successful uprisings became known as the Arab Spring. They toppled Tunisia and Egypt's presidents. This gave hope to Syrian pro-democracy activists. The Syrian government, led by Bashar al-Assad, responded to the protests by imprisoning and killing hundreds. Defects from the military announced the formation of the Free Syrian Army, a rebel group trying to overthrow the government. As the civil war progressed, sectarian divisions hardened. Assad sought to portray the opposition as Sunni Islamic extremists in the mold of al-Qaeda and participants in conspiracies against Syria. By the summer of 2011, Syria's regional neighbors had begun to split into pro-Assad and anti-Assad camps. Iran and Russia continued their support. In the fall of 2011, the new Syrian National Council said it had forged a common front of internal and exiled opposition activists. In 2012, the UN endorsed a non-binding peace plan drafted by UN envoy Kofi Annan, with China and Russia supporting the plan. Only to be a couple months later, Syria shot down a Turkish plane, and Turkey declared if Syria approached Turkey's borders, they will be seen as a military threat. Many small revolts occurred in 2012, killing small amounts of people. In 2014, ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, militants declared caliphate in territory from Aleppo to eastern Iraqi province of Diyala. Later that year, the U.S. and 5 Arab countries launched airstrikes against ISIS around Aleppo and Raqqa. Between 2015 and 2017, Russia and the United States both intervened in the conflict. Both countries also ordered missile attacks on areas where ISIS was reportedly located, trying to destroy them. Iraq and Syria have both been destroyed due to the civil war in both countries. Many surrounding countries have also been affected by the devastation of war. The U.S. is providing nearly $7.7 billion throughout Syria and the region since the start in 2011. The U.S. is providing emergency food and nutrition assistance, safe drinking water, improved sanitation, shelter, emergency health services, protection for vulnerable groups, and mine risk education. Despite the aid from the U.S., this conflict is still going on. There is a stalemate between the two sides. Neither country can defeat each other, and nobody can agree on the future. As we are coming to the end of the podcast, I will now interview a Syrian civilian who has been affected by the civil war. His name is Nassim Toma, a 34-year-old whose house has been destroyed and is living on the war-torn streets. Mr. Toma, describe the hardships.
It has been very tough. I hope they come together and agree on an ending soon. Nobody here wants them to keep fighting. They are destroying our homes and our lives.
Do you remember the days before the war?
Very vaguely. I remember going to work and not risking my life walking down the streets. It all changed when the protests began. I knew something bad was going to happen. I was just waiting.
Have you lost any family members due to the conflict?
Yes, I lost my loving wife. My son and I live in slums that are filled with many other people who have been afflicted by the war.
How often are there attacks?
Every single day you can find the conflict in the streets, from civilian riots to the military taking matter into their own hands. You can expect some sort of conflict to be going on. It makes it very hard to sleep knowing that something bad could happen to me or my son.
Do you see this war ending anytime soon?
I like to tell myself that the end is near, but I've been telling myself that for 8 years now and nothing is getting better.
Thanks for your time, Mr. Toma. We are very sorry and hope things do get better. We will have a following podcast in the upcoming months describing the Syrian civil war, the status of the country, and the status of the conflict itself. We can only hope for better to happen in the situation. This is Carson signing off of this podcast, explaining and informing you about the Syrian and Iraq conflict. For more podcasts about conflicts and other wars, go to our website at www.podcast.com for more educational and informational topics.